The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Glory to you, O Lord. As Jesus was leaving Jericho with his disciples and a sizable crowd, Bartimaeus, a blind man, the son of Timaeus, sat by the roadside begging. On hearing that it was Jesus of Nazareth, Bartimaeus began to cry out and say, "Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me." Many rebuked him, telling him to be silent. But he kept calling out all the more, "Son of David, have pity on me." Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." So they called the blind man, saying to him, "Take courage, get up. Jesus is calling you." He threw aside his cloak, sprang up, and came to Jesus. Jesus said to him, "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind man replied, "Master, I want to see." Jesus told him, "Go your way, your faith has saved you." Immediately he received his sight and followed him on the way. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
The weekday readings are not paired like the Sunday readings would be. The first reading in some way will almost always mirror intentionally the theme of the gospel. That's not the case during the week. So today the first reading from Sirach is essentially just giving praise for the works and the good of all creation. Because it's a wisdom book and has the quality of proverb, that might be a little less than clear to recognize, but ultimately Sirach is fulfilling the divine wisdom again in praise. So that praise is not only raising our hands in a charismatic kind of way, but praise is honoring and reverencing God not only for who God is, but for all that God does. It's not a unique insight, but I continue to be impressed that every spring you think, boy, the trees are just greener this year than they ever were. But they're like that every spring, are they not? And then after a couple of weeks, certainly by a month, and you get that fresh green kind of turns into the lighter green of a warm summer, which we're beginning to seem to have. And it's like, oh, it's summer, it's green. But the trees are just as beautiful, and they provide so much life for us. And the, what's the word? I forget, the metamorphosis or whatever, the transfer of all the air that the trees clean. Forget that word. 7th grade biology, why can't I remember that? Anyway, give thanks to God for a tree today. Tough crowd today. Just forget that. Let's go right to Bartimaeus. Clearly, it's a story about Bartimaeus, and he's a primary character, but you certainly would recognize not only that Jesus in all of the Gospels is healing blind people, mostly men. It is a historical fact that the streets of Jericho in particular, the blind would line the streets because it was a major city at that time. I think it held one of the, it was a seat of government at that particular time. And so people would sit by the roadside and they would beg. And the thought's been coming to mind, and so I just mentioned, it's always a tension. Is it just me, or are more and more corners, practically every corner of this city and the cities between here and everywhere, there's somebody standing there begging? No, there's a tension. There isn't, oh, God, again, what do you do? And some people are very generous and they give, and other people, it's like, you know what, that's a racket, and they probably make more money than I do, and so they don't give any. it's a conscience thing, isn't it? So you have to obey yourself on that and do what you feel the Lord's calling you to do to help the corner people. Is Bartimaeus a corner person? It's interesting that he should be singled out, because history would imply that he was one of many sitting along the road begging. In another way, the gospel really is about faith and God's call. It's clearly written as a style or a protocol of how to hear God's call and what to do when you realize you're being called. How did Bartimaeus come to know Jesus in such a way that he would shout out this clear and obvious expression of faith? Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me. Did God give him the grace or the insight to recognize that obviously, Bartimaeus believed he had the power to heal? Did he have some insight about his nature as Messiah? The title Son of David implies that. Have pity on me. Show me your mercy, it basically says. Now again, the crowd, the people say, oh, quiet, go on, it's our turn now, And don't just notice that on the corner people? It's like, this is my corner, and don't you come here, because this is my corner, and I'm here from 9 to 3, and then George comes, and he gets it from 3 to 7, and then Linda comes, and Linda gets it from 7 to 9 or until it gets dark. And if you take somebody's corner, hey, be quiet, get out of here, this is my spot. I don't know why that connection is there today, but I'm just making it. We all have our spots, and we want people to get out of our sunlight, so to speak. People, why are they trying to keep Bartimaeus silent? Because they want any favor Jesus does to more likely fall upon them. But Bartimaeus, again, as an expression of his faith, shouts out all the more. And then the mood of the crowd completely changes. Jesus, okay, you're going to be the one today. He calls him, or he tells him, tell him to come up here. And then they say, take courage, get up, he's calling you. So Bartimaeus throws his cloak aside, again another clue or a direction, protocol of being called, that we leave all things behind. That cloak was very important. It cooled him during the day, warmed him during the evening, and also during the day it was that which he could throw on the ground and people could put their coins in his cloak. So he could hear them hit the cloak and then gather them. He's blind, he can't look around on the ground, and he can gather his cloak and be able to see or shake or feel what's in there. But he leaves it behind. In other words, there's nothing more important now than Jesus, even my source of income. What do you want me to do for you? Master, I want to see. The obvious is that he wants physical sight. The spiritual is that he has faith, but he wants his faith to be awakened. Go on your way, your faith has saved you. Immediately he received his sight. Physically he could see, but his faith was also awakened because he followed him on the way. Make of that what you will. How is God calling you? What might we have to leave behind so we can see more clearly what God's call is and have the courage to do it? If you don't get any answer on that, say a prayer for a tree anyway.